Good morning, and thanks for joining me as we continue to talk about the Bermuda 100 campaign. We are at the corner of Route 1, which is the Richmond-Petersburg Turnpike, running north-south, Harrogate Road, which is off to my left, running off to the west, Swift Creek, which is about 200 yards behind me, and behind that about 4 miles is Petersburg, and about 20 miles north or behind you is Richmond. You are facing south, I am facing north. On May 9th, 1864, about 160 years ago, federal forces were moving out of their headquarters position at Point of Rocks to threaten both Chester Station to the west and Petersburg to the south and west of Point of Rocks. The Federal Brigade, composed of the 21st, the 25th, and the 29th Massachusetts and the 9th New Jersey, were moving south along the Richmond-Petersburg Turnpike towards Petersburg. Confederate forces had entrenched at the bridge over Swift Creek, again about 200 yards behind me, had entrenched on the south side. So they had entrenchments and Swift Creek as their defensive fortification. The Federals, moving down towards Petersburg, saw them entrenched there. The Federals were being shelled by Confederate forces near the railroad bridge about a half mile to the east to my right, under the North Carolina Brigades and General Johnson's forces. About a mile to my left, to the west, Confederate forces had dug in at Brander's Bridge. The Federal forces moved here and then deployed into a defensive position, knowing that it would not make sense to charge down the hill towards Swift Creek and the Confederate entrenchments. But the Confederates received faulty orders from the north, moved across, out of their entrenchments, across Swift Creek and up this hill, which I hope you can understand the hill on the video here, moved up the hill and attacked the Federal forces here. The Federal forces first started individual fire, which means each man in rank loads and fires at his own pace. Load, fire, man beside you loads, fires, but it might not be in complete unison. The order went out as the South Carolinians came across the creek to hold fire and then volley fire, which meant the entire brigade would fire at the same time. And as the Massachusetts men and the New Jersey men did that in 4 successive volley fires, they stopped the South Carolinians coming up the slope here. The Federal forces, seeing what the Confederate forces were doing, were understandably confused, because by this time in the war, all the forces knew you dig in, you entrench. When you're dug in and you're entrenched, you are a hard force to move. The Confederate forces had done that, and not only were entrenched, but behind a natural barrier of Swift Creek. So the Federal forces were not going to attack en masse. Of course, the Confederate forces did not realize that, knew that they were protecting Petersburg, did not necessarily know what was behind them at the time, and as I said, got conflicting orders from the War Department in Richmond, moving out of their entrenchments to attack the Federal forces here. But as I've said on many of these videos, this is hallowed ground. Swift Creek still is where it was 160 years ago. Route 1 is where it was as the Richmond-Petersburg Turnpike 160 years ago. Harrogate Road is where it was. In fact, Ivy Methodist Church which stands today at the corner of Harrogate Road and Route 1, was where Arrowfield Church was 160 years ago. And this battle is referred to both as the Battle of Swift Creek and the Battle of Arrowfield Church. This is hallowed ground. The troops who marched here from Point of Rocks marched over what is now I-95. So as you travel I-95, you're traveling over areas that they traveled over. As you travel along Route 1, you're traveling where soldiers died, where this ground was hallowed. It's important to remember that, and it's important to take the time to come to these places that are not the big battlefields like Vicksburg, like Gettysburg, like the battles around Atlanta. Come to these areas and remember what these soldiers did.